It's the spooky month, boys. Who's ready for some scary stories?
I'm so ready, Ariana, you have no idea.
Before we begin, this video was inspired by PresidentalAI, so credits to him. Anyway, Joe, you can do the first story.
You know it, let's begin. My parents had purchased a condo about 10 minutes from their home around the time my older brother was born, with the intention that my siblings and I have the option of renting it when we would come of age. I moved in alongside my brother a few weeks after my 18th birthday, exhilarated by the freedom from our childhood home, which had become laden with traumatic memories over the years. The move took 2 or 3 days, and we had a U-Haul coming in and out of the driveway during that time. My first day of college occurred a few days later. I had a full schedule 3 days a week, which I would later regret, with my last class getting out at 6 p.m. The city I live in is notorious for heavy traffic, and I would not get home until roughly an hour and a half later, despite the university being less than 15 miles away. The sun was mostly down by the time I turned into my street, and there were a few people, some accompanied and one alone, taking their evening strolls. There was nothing remarkable about it. The driveway was occupied, so I parked on the street and made my way home. The following day, I got off my closing shift at 9 p.m. It was dark by the time I got home, and there was a man walking on the strip of sidewalk that faces the condo. I would not have noticed that he was the lone man from the evening before if it was not for him wearing the same outfit. A bright yellow hoodie, black nylon track pants with white pinstripes, gray Nike trainers, and a tan baseball cap. As I got out of my car, we shared a quick glance and continued on our ways. 2 days later, I got off my closing shift and picked my now ex-boyfriend up for a date. We went back to the condo so that I could change, and in the dark, I saw the man again, wearing the same outfit and on the same strip of sidewalk. "It's him again." I sounded more surprised than sussed out, and my boyfriend was confused. I explained that I had been seeing him walking around and that he was always wearing the same thing. We got out of the car and stared at him. Our bodies turned toward him. He ducked behind a car. Now properly sussed out, we got back in my car and watched him get into his and drive away with his lights off. It was too dark, and he was too far away for us to catch a license plate. At this point, I was not sure if this man even lived in the neighborhood. We went about our night, and I dropped my boyfriend back off at his parents' house. He told me to call him or the police if I saw the man again, and I agreed. I got home around midnight. The man was a street away from his usual spot, crouching below a tree and hugging his knees under his chin. I drove past him and noticed a different man in a blue flannel and jeans approaching a streetlight. He got under the illuminating glow and pulled his phone out, attempting to make a call. I was unsure if the two men had any association with each other until I looked back over at the yellow hoodie man. He was no longer under the tree. He was also under a streetlight a few meters away from the tree. His back was turned to me, but it appeared as though he was taking a call. As I looked back and forth between the two men, it became pretty obvious that they were communicating with each other. I drove away and called the police. They told me to stay where I was or go to another safe location and that they would contact me when the matter was taken care of. I dozed off and was awoken maybe an hour later by the promised phone call. I was told that neither of the two men were residents of the area and that they were simply told not to come back on reports of suspicious activity. After being advised to call again if they came back, I went home. I was tired enough that I had no trouble sleeping for a little while. Around 4 a.m., I was sharply roused by the metal screen door rattling against its frame. The force slowly grew in intensity, and eventually, the walls and floor were quaking. I peeked through the blinds of my second-story window, which overlooks the front door, and of course saw the man in the yellow hoodie, aggressively attempting to open the screen door. I was shaking in my boots on my mattress, which was still on the floor as I had not yet purchased a bed frame. I received a call from my equally bewildered brother who was in his room. I told him to call my dad while I called the police. It has now been almost 4 years, and I can assure you all that my street smarts have markedly improved.
Not really scary, Joe, but just wait till I blow your socks off when you hear mine.
It was Loki giving me the creeps, Ariana. Show me what you got. Before you go, the story was posted by user Isaballs, and the story was called The Creepy Cartoon Stalker.
Time to give you all the creeps. Hey everyone! I don't post much on Reddit, but I need to get out what just happened a few hours ago. This seemed like the place to put it. For some background first, I'm a 29-year-old woman. I live in an apartment in a sketchier side of my town, so I'm not unaccustomed to strange people pulling up and strange things happening. I've been through a home break-in, so I'm very hyper-vigilant when it comes to keeping myself and my home safe. I also smoke cigarettes, nasty habit I know, but having cats and not wanting my house to reek like smoke, I'll walk out to my balcony to smoke. That's exactly what I was doing when this happened. I was sitting on my balcony smoking and just enjoying my night when I notice a car I've never seen before pull into the back parking lot of my apartment right by my balcony. I initially felt a bit off, but I didn't want to come off as being the paranoid neighbor, so I keep sitting and smoking my cigarette. Then I hear footsteps making a beeline through my backyard. There's a large and burly man that I've never seen before walking briskly through my backyard. Again, I still don't try to make much of it because they might be there for my neighbor. My anxiety is definitely on alert, but not in panic mode. Until I realize he's going straight for my portion of the backyard. He then does something that is still freaking me out as I type this. He stops right in my backyard and looks up at me on my balcony, not saying a word. Now I'm in absolute panic mode. I audibly say, "Oh, fuck no," spring up, slam and lock my balcony door, run to my upstairs bathroom, and dial 911. I listened to every sound from downstairs while I stood panicking in my bathroom, and truthfully, it sounded like someone was messing with my back door. I don't know for sure because I was in hypervigilance. I do know he was in my backyard for a few minutes because I was in my bathroom for several minutes until I decided to peek out my balcony window. I saw him walking to his car and getting in. That also tells me that I don't think he was here to rob me, but something more sinister. Luckily, he was lazy because, again, I live on the cheaper side of town, so you can imagine the quality of my doors and locks. I'm really hoping it was just some guy who was drunk, high, and had the wrong house, but my gut is telling me otherwise. Regardless, I hope we never meet again. Sorry about my voice, everyone. It's just when I speak for a while, it does that, so my apologies.
All good, Ariana. That story was on the Let's Not Meet Reddit, and the user is NoProfile9616. Now, for me, I'm going to share a ghost story published by user Senzupine and from the Reddit Ghost Stories. I was raised in the rural South, where the shade from the forest cooled our house in the summertime. My childhood bedroom had a large window that started a foot off the ground and stood about 5 feet tall and was nearly 3 feet wide. When the sun was out, this window still placed an uneasy feeling in my stomach. Once the moon rose over our house, the window started watching you, waiting for you, drop your guard. What manner of threat it actually posed was questionable in reality, if any. But my instincts never really cared for that explanation, and I openly avoided it every night until I was finally asleep. Finally, the weather decided to switch from 90s every day to a mid-60s every day. The arrival of fall meant one thing for us every year. We would be raking leaves up from the year after school most days going forward. While picking up the leaves outside, I saw someone in a brown waterproof coat and camo hat staring in my window. I froze seeing this man staring into my room for several reasons. The first was that while my window was a foot off the ground from the floor inside, it was a solid 6 foot or more from the earth outside. His feet hung loosely and dangled on nothing like a bad Halloween decoration, but he was standing on nothing, as if someone had hung him by the neck from the roof of our house. I started walking away from him, hoping not to give him any reason to notice me. Luckily, he seemed not to. I told my grandfather about the whole experience, and while he firmly did not believe in ghosts, he honored my word as a man that at least that's what I thought I saw. A few months later, I saw the exact same man at a gun show acting completely normal. I could see his face a bit better, and he had a scraggly black bear with white in it and seemed to not notice me. Talking to my grandfather about it, he decided to try to talk to the man without mentioning the event to see how he was, and he seemed completely normal. I still don't know what the fuck is going on, and I never got an explanation, but the anxiety of the window never left me.
For the viewers, the video will instantly cut off after I'm done telling this story, so please like and subscribe. This story was posted on the Let's Not Meet, and the user is Happy Cream Cheese. This story happened when I was about 13 or 14. I grew up in a town with a lot of walking, biking trails and forest area, about a 10-minute walk from my house. So I spent a lot of time outside. One of my best friends, we'll call him Anthony, lived in the neighborhood across from mine. I would frequently walk to his house to knock on his door and see whether he wanted to join me in biking aimlessly around town. On this particular day, he decided to join me, and we went down to the local lake, an extremely popular spot during the summer. It's never empty. There's a trail right next to the local library which leads to the lake. We decided to hang out by the trail entrance, as it was right next to a tunnel that run under the street above, providing good shade and amplification for listening to music together off our iPods. This tunnel is probably a good 20 feet long or so, with the only easy path back up to the street above being the paved one on one side. The trail itself is gravel with trees on both sides. No easy way to get off with a bike unless you use the designated entrances and exits. Anthony and I were hanging out on the opposite side of the tunnel from the trail entrance so as not to bother any families getting on the trail with our music. We had our bikes leaned up on the side of the tunnel when I noticed a man coming through the opposite end, right next to the trail entrance. He entered the tunnel, and once he was about 15 feet away, called out, "I'm a city-named police officer." It didn't take more than a 2-second glance to tell that he wasn't. He was wearing cargo shorts, a green tank top, sandals, and a big military-style backpack. Even from about 15 feet away, I could tell that his skin looked really greasy. His hair was unkempt. I immediately knew something bad was about to happen, and my adrenaline started to rush. I turned to my friend and just yelled at him, "Anthony, run!" To which he got on his bike and began to ride off. The man was standing between us and the trail entrance, so there was no easy way for us to take off without either needing to go directly past him or down the trail in the opposite direction. Anthony chose to try for the main entrance that the man was blocking. As he rode past, the man reached out and grabbed his arm. Anthony sort of stopped, but the man was more focused on me and ended up letting go, to which Anthony quickly took off. I knew I wouldn't be as lucky as Anthony was if I tried to push my way past the man, so I immediately started looking for other ways to run. I noticed that there was actually a small dirt trail on the same end of the tunnel that we had been. I tried to take my bike up it, and the man yelled out behind me, "Didn't your parents ever teach you not to run from the fucking cops?" The trail grew too small for me to carry my bike down, so I just dropped it on the ground and continued running, hoping that this side trail led back up to the street, where he at least wouldn't be able to hurt me without witnesses. He chased me about halfway down the trail, but eventually turned around. I ended up coming out at the library and quickly ran to the top of the tunnel so that I could see what he was doing. All I saw was him riding off on my bikey. I called the cops, and they came to my house to give me a lineup. After I walked home, I instantly identified the guy. Apparently, he and his twin brother were homeless and on meth, which would explain his demeanor and motivation. They were known for stealing bikes in the area, but never so brazenly. I was just glad that the situation wasn't worse, because based on his substance use, he very easily could have chosen violence at the drop of a hat. To the fake cop that stole my bike, let's not meet.